Well, in fact, what did you think of the Prime Minister's statement that you're a foreign company, you and Rio Tinto are foreign companies, and that therefore it's okay?
Well, look, obviously we're across the detail of our financial statements and so on in a lot of detail. And so I for example, know that, we invested all of the cash flows we generated last year back into Australia.
And the Treasurer says you're whipping up a fear campaign. I mean, that's true, isn't it?
I'm just saying that it is pretty obvious that if there is a decade-long stability of tax agreements and you dramatically propose a change, particularly for things where shareholders have made losses, profits over many, many years, and you suddenly say, look, we want another bite of the cherry, that is not going to make things easy.
Just on the detail, would you accept this tax if it was the same as the petroleum resource rent tax? That is to say, the allowable return was roughly double what is proposed here, and it wasn't retrospective, or it wasn't on existing projects?
Well, if we had a prospective tax that was also differentiated by product, and I want to emphasize that, because I think there's a certain academic elegance in saying everything is at 40%. The reality is the investment patterns, the return patterns for bauxite, nickel, coal, diamonds and so on, all very different. And our proposal has always been that each one of those should have its own rate.
Are there any implications from the tax on the proposed joint venture with Rio Tinto in the Pilbara?
I think Rio and ourselves are very, very committed to the joint venture, and I don't think that there is any immediate impact. Obviously, more uncertainty is not a good thing in general, but I think the two parties are very committed and have made public statements to that effect.
Leaving aside the impact of the tax even, there's been talk that there may need to be an adjustment to the equalisation payment within the joint venture proposal. Is that true?
Alan, I really can't go beyond just saying the two parties want to make this a win-win outcome for both of us. There's a number of regulatory steps that are still to be completed, some time to pass, but we want to do this joint venture.
Would it be fair to say that once the regulatory steps have been passed, that you and Rio will have another look at the terms?
I think that we are committed to making this a win-win outcome for both parties.
Obviously, it's been a big week on the markets, and the resources rent tax is not the only reason that it has been, perhaps one of them, but things seem to be falling apart in Europe with the bailout of Greece. How concerned are you about the state of the commodity markets in particular, and also the global economy?
Galen, we were very positively surprised last year when China made a sort of a running start out of the global financial crisis and really propelled and in many ways saved the Australian economy. But what we've consistently said over the last year is that the high debt levels, unemployment and so on are going to continue to be a drag on global economic growth rates overall. Now, I think from an Australian perspective, the fact that we are close to markets, the fact that the North Asian economies are doing well, obviously is not going to insulate us, but certainly I think we're in better shape than a country where the primary trade patterns would have been with another part of the world.
Have you changed your view about the impact of the debt, particularly in Europe, and you're concerned about the risk of contagion?
I think that it's very difficult to predict, if you've got a high debt loads, exactly how that plays out over time. I think that 6 months ago, this Greece event was unforeseen. I don't know what happens in the future, but I do know that high debt loads are going to continue to be a drag on overall economic growth rates.
And the other thing is, with China, there's a lot of talk about the property bubble there, and the government is trying hard to restrain things. The Shanghai Property Index has fallen 30% this year. Do you have any concerns about the China momentum continuing this year?
As I said, China came out of the global financial crisis very strongly, and I think in some ways one can say that it ran a little hot. 12% growth rate, even for China, is a little hot. And I think what the Chinese government is trying to do is to moderate that down to the 8, 9, 10% range.
And the spot iron ore prices beginning to soften. How do you see that unfolding this year, particularly in relation to your own contracts?
I think that the iron ore market is still very undersupplied. And obviously the price in absolute terms is actually quite high, and that has passed through to steel prices being quite high in absolute terms. I really can't predict how it develops over the next 12 months, but it seems to me, if I look at forward trade activity, that the trade patterns indicate that we'll stay more or less at the levels that we've got now.
Thanks for joining us, Marius Kloppers.
Thank you, Alan.